My name is Donald Kessler. I was a broadcast meteorologist for WTOX in Roanoke, Virginia from 1979 to 2011. 32 years of standing in front of green screens, pointing at pressure systems, telling people whether to bring an umbrella. I loved every minute of it. But the work that mattered most to me wasn't on television. It was at home. I built my first personal weather station in 1988. A wooden post in the backyard with a thermometer, a barometer I found at a surplus store, a hand-built wind vane made from aluminum flashing, and a compass rose I etched myself. I recorded everything. Temperature at 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., barometric pressure at noon, wind speed and direction at the top of every hour. I was meticulous, every reading handwritten on strip chart paper, then later transferred to a Commodore 64 program I wrote myself. Green text on black screen. Crude graphs, but they were my graphs. 15 years of continuous atmospheric data from a single backyard in Southwest Virginia. I retired in 2011. The weather station stayed in the yard, but I stopped recording. Last year, my wife suggested I digitize the old charts before they deteriorated. 30,000 individual data points on yellowing paper. I bought a flatbed scanner and started feeding them through, one sheet at a time. That's when I found October 14th. The first anomaly appeared on the October 14th, 1989 chart. The barometric pressure reading at noon was 27.31 inches of mercury. Normal sea level pressure is 29.92. The lowest pressure ever recorded in a non-tropical cyclone was around 27.91. My gauge showed 27.31. Below any value the instrument was designed to measure. The needle had been pulled past its minimum marking, pressing against the physical stop at the bottom of the dial. I assumed it was a sensor error, a calibration drift. I checked the gauge the next week, perfectly calibrated. I kept scanning. October 14th, 1990, the same anomaly, 27.28 inches, even lower than the year before. October 14th, 1991, 27.33. October 14th, 1992, 27.26. Every year, same date, same time, always the noon reading, never the 6 a.m. or 6 p.m. readings. And the values were getting worse, not linearly, erratically, as if whatever was causing the drop was varying in intensity but never disappearing. I pulled the wind data next. The wind vane recorded direction using a potentiometer connected to the Commodore 64 through a cut-gun interface board. The software converted the voltage to a compass bearing, 360 degrees, north through north again. On October 14th of every year, the wind bearing showed as error. The potentiometer voltage was outside the expected range. I traced the circuit. The wind vane had been forced past its physical stop. The compass bearing wasn't 359 degrees, just west of north, or 1 degree, just east of north. The reading was being pushed past 360 degrees, trying to point at something beyond the circle of the compass, something that isn't on any map. I started pulling data from other sources. The National Weather Service maintains a network of automated surface observing stations. I pulled historical data for every station within 100 miles of my house. NOAA, private stations, university research stations, anything with archived barometric data. The same anomaly appeared at every station within a 40-mile radius of my house. October 14th, noon. Pressure dropping to values that shouldn't exist. Outside that radius, nothing. The data returned to normal, as if whatever was causing the pressure drop was localized, centered on a single point. I mapped the affected stations on a road atlas. The 40-mile radius stations formed a perfect circle. My house was at the center. That's when I got scared. I started watching the dates. October 14th, 1996. I decided to stay up all night. I set up my old broadcast camcorder pointed at the barometer, a backup digital gauge connected to a laptop, and a portable audio recorder. If something happened, I wanted it on tape. At 11:47 p.m., the barometric pressure began to drop. The camcorder caught it. The analog needle, which had been steady at 30.12 all evening, began to move. Not smoothly, the way a pressure front moves. It was being pulled. The needle trembled, then swung left, past the 28 mark, past the minimum scale marking, all the way to the glass face of the gauge. The glass cracked, a hairline fracture from the center to the 3 o'clock position. The needle pressed against the glass, bending slightly. The digital gauge showed a number, 26.89. The software couldn't display it properly. It showed as a string of hashtag symbols, the way old programs displayed values outside their range. The wind vane, 50 feet away in the yard, was spinning, counterclockwise. It hit the physical stop at north and kept trying. I could hear it from the porch, the aluminum arm grinding against the stop bolt. When I checked it the next morning, the arm had bent approximately 15 degrees past its intended range of motion. Temperature dropped 30 degrees in 60 seconds, from 58 Fahrenheit to 28. Frost formed on the camcorder lens. My breath became visible, then thick, then opaque. But the camcorder caught something I didn't see with my eyes. In the infrared-sensitive night mode, the camera showed a shadow on the ground. Not cloud shadow. There were no clouds. Not a building shadow. The angles were wrong. The shadow was geometric, circular, and it was rotating. I have the footage. I've watched it frame by frame. The shadow rotates counterclockwise at approximately 2 revolutions per minute. It's cast on the lawn by something above the frame, something large, circular, and close enough to cast a defined shadow at ground level. But when I point the camera upward, there's nothing, just stars. The shadow exists on the ground without an object to cast it. At 11:48 p.m., everything stopped simultaneously. The barometer returned to 30.12. The wind vane straightened. The temperature climbed back to 58. The shadow vanished. The audio recorder captured one final sound before the return to normal. A low, subsonic rumble. I had to slow the recording down by 800% to hear it properly. At normal speed, you feel it more than hear it. A vibration in your chest, in the fillings of your teeth. When I pitched it down, it sounded like 2 massive surfaces grinding against each other, like the sky was scraping against something underneath it. I have digitized every chart now, all 15 years of data. The October 14th readings form a sequence that shouldn't exist in any meteorological record. The pressure anomalies are getting worse over time. The 2003 reading, my last, shows a value that the Commodore 64 software couldn't even store as a number. It saved the raw potentiometer voltage instead. 11.0047. The maximum measurable voltage was 10.0. Something is pushing past the limits of the instruments, past the limits of the measurement, past the limits of what the hardware was designed to represent. I still live in the house. The weather station is in the yard. The barometer is behind glass that I've never repaired. The crack is still there, running from center to 3 o'clock. Some nights I sit on the porch and wait. The October 14th readings continue, even though the station has been decommissioned. The wind vane still bends on that date, even though it hasn't been connected to anything since 2011. Whatever is above this house, it doesn't need my instruments to affect them. It just needs the date, and the date is always coming.